I'm just dropping in to let you know that we have a great selection of handmade herbal products. They make great gifts for your friends and family. We have books for gardeners, homesteaders, and herbalists. We also offer handcrafted lotions and salves, plus herbal teas and heirloom seeds. Make this holiday handmade at smallhousefarm.com.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Seeds and Weeds podcast, brought to you by Small House Farm. Join us as we talk with gardeners, foragers, herbalists, chefs, and community activists to explore the many ways that plants impact our cultures and cuisines, our history, and our future. I'm your host, Bevan Cohen, and this is Seeds and Weeds. Welcome to the podcast, friends. You know, this is sort of a special show today. It is the last full episode of the year. Our next episode is going to be sort of a roundup and look back at 2024. But today, we have a very special guest, and this interview is just packed with information. We're hanging out with Maria Noël Groves to talk about her new book, Herbal Remedies for Sleep. Maria has such a wealth of knowledge, and she shared so much with us during this conversation. We're going to be talking about her company, Wintergreen Botanicals, and the online courses that she's offering. She has classes for beginning herbalists, but also some fantastic programs for folks that are looking to dig a little bit deeper into their herbal education. We're, of course, talking about her newest book, and Maria will teach us about adaptogenic and nervine herbs, plus when and how to use them. We'll even go through a list of herbs from the book, and Maria will share her favorite ways to work with each of the plants. This interview is just wall-to-wall information. It might be our most jam-packed episode of all time. I'm hoping that this conversation inspires some folks to try their hand at crafting some herbal products, or at least incorporating some herbs into your daily life and sleep routine. So, of course, I need to mention that at Small House Farm, we have a fine selection of herbal tinctures and topical products. We have seeds for all of your herb gardening needs, as well as books to help you along your journey. We even have an herb co-op available to members of our Patreon community where you can purchase organic herbs and teas by the ounce. As usual, the link for more info can be found down in the show notes, or you can head on over to smallhousefarm.com. Maria Noël Groves is a clinical herbalist and runs Wintergreen Botanicals, nestled in the pine forests of New Hampshire. Her business is devoted to education and empowerment via classes, health consultations, and writing, with the foundational belief that good health grows in nature. She's the author of many award-winning best-selling books, including her latest, Herbal Remedies for Sleep. Maria, my friend, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here on the show.
I am super excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, I'm going to guess that most of our listeners are probably very familiar with who you are, and some of your previous books, of course, Your Body into Balance, Grow Your Own Herbal Remedies, and you got this new book, Herbal Remedies for Sleep, and I'm looking forward to digging into that. But first, before we get into it, could you just share with our listeners a little bit about who you are, your background, and your journey as an herbalist?
Sure. Well, as you know, my name is Maria Noël Groves, and I have a practice called Wintergreen Botanicals in Chichester, New Hampshire. We just moved about a year ago, and I studied at the Southwest School of Botanical Medicine with Michael Moore. I also studied with Rosemary Gladstar and a variety of other people, but I would say those were two of my biggest earlier formal teachers. And my business is threefold. It's really all about educating and empowerment. It's not really about product sales. And so I see clients, I write. Initially, it was magazine articles. Now it's more books. And then I also do a lot of teaching. And that's more or less kind of what I do. I have a Western herbal background predominantly.
I was going through your website there at Wintergreen Botanicals. It's a herbal clinic. You have the education center. There's a lot of stuff going on there. And I saw that you offer a whole slew of online classes. Could you tell us a little bit more about those?
I do. So I have three basic programs that I have. One is the Home Herbalist series, and that's the one that's the most popular because it's the introductory program. And so we cover 9 really important body systems, a little bit of anatomy and physiology, how they work, how they get out of balance, and how to bring them back into balance with a variety of key herbs. And then we also cover at least one remedy making technique per each one of those 9 classes. And then we continue it with the Beyond the Home Herbalist series, which covers a very similar format of another 9 classes, but it covers additional topics, health concerns, body systems, and additional remedies. So that one's actually a lot of fun. Then after a while of doing those 2 series, I had students saying, all right, this is great, but I want more, or I'm thinking about starting an herbal practice and I need more education than those starter programs would give, which are more geared towards your home herbalism. And so I put together the advanced program, and that's pretty big program, but lately I've been teaching it in modules as live stream. And then the whole thing is available as an on-demand program. So this coming year in 2025, we're still wrapping up the details, but we're going to be doing the Home Herbalist series in the late winter, early spring. We'll do a few advanced classes. Then we're going to do the Beyond the Home Herbalist series throughout the summer. And then in the fall, we'll do the majority of the advanced modules, which for 2025 is going to be focused on advanced body systems and health concerns. I'm really excited. We're putting the final touches on that right now.
Very cool. All right, now I want to dig into this book, Herbal Remedies for Sleep, how to use healing herbs and natural therapies to ease stress, promote relaxation, and encourage healthy sleep habits. This sounds like a book that literally every single person on this planet could benefit from, especially right now. It's very timely.
Yes. Wouldn't all of our lives be great if we had no stress and we're always relaxed and had great sleep habits?
Now, you open the book with a chapter on the importance of getting a good night's sleep. And I know that, of course, if I get a good night's sleep, I'm going to feel good. If I don't, I'm going to be tired the next day. But there's more to it than that. Why is a good night's sleep so important for us? And what happens to us if we don't get it?
There are so many ways in which getting a good quality sleep benefits our health. I wouldn't even be able to, cover all of it, but I'd say some really big areas are that, for our immune system function very much requires a good quality amount of sleep every night. They did one study where folks who slept less than 6 hours per night, which really isn't that small of an amount of sleep. Many people get 6 hours or less per night on an ongoing basis. But in this study, those who got less than 6 hours per night, when they were swabbed with the rhinovirus, which is the common cold, they were 3 times more likely to get sick from that than the folks who had slept more than 6 hours per night. There are plenty of studies showing whether it's from common colds and flus to COVID to cancer, that getting adequate quality sleep is good for our immune systems because it has that chance to reboot and restore. When we sleep, we reboot, restore, repair, all of that. We also do a lot of really important processing for our cognitive well-being and our mental well-being. And so the deep part of our sleep does a great job kind of with that restoration and repair. But we also have the REM sleep, which is when we have the rapid eye movement sleep. That's when we are dreaming and all of that. And that's very important. We also, in our sleep processes, we're going to put memories from that short-term memory into our long-term memory. And so all of these things happen at different stages of our sleep, and having adequate amount of time to go through all of those stages is very important for our ability to think clearly, for our ability to have an even-keeled mood, for us to not be easily stressed out throughout the day, which is that irony or that vicious or positive cycle that if we're more stressed during the day, it's harder to sleep. But if it's harder to sleep or we don't get enough sleep, we'll tend to be more impacted by the stress of the day. And so that could be a bad thing, but it can also mean that once we start to work on the daytime stress or the quality of sleep, that everything else starts to improve.
Man, that's amazing to think that something as simple as just getting a good night's sleep is right up there as some of the most important things we can do for our overall health.
Yeah. And it's free and it's fun. It's very enjoyable to get a quality sleep, but it can be elusive. There are plenty of people who choose not to get enough sleep at night, but there are also plenty of people who are trying their best and they're just not quite getting there. And I'd say this is particularly common as we age, or if we're under stress, or if our blood sugar is already out of balance, if folks have sleep apnea, and then also particularly as folks are going through peri and post-menopause. Those are just a few times of our lives when it might be more challenging to sleep well. And so we cover that in the book, but a lot of the basic things that we can do to support our health and support our sleep will also help us out.
Now, in another chapter, you explore the effects of stress on the body and mind, which you were kind of just getting into right there. And you share ways to support our stress response through the use of adaptogens. Could you enlighten our listeners a little bit with some info on exactly what is an adaptogen?
Yeah, to put it basically, an adaptogen is an herb that helps us adapt to stress. So more specifically, we're more resilient to stress, so that when stressors come our way, instead of just clunking right into fight or flight mode and being in that, super stressed sympathetic nervous system response state, we rise to the challenge. So it's not that we're necessarily super relaxed. It's more that we are just more balanced and able to more deftly maneuver around the stresses of the day without being quite so negatively impacted by them. Generally speaking, they're usually very safe herbs that have a very modulating effect on our stress hormones so that, it could raise them or lower them based off of what is needed. They usually benefit a lot of different body systems, and they particularly tend to have an impact on the stress hormones in particular. So things like cortisol and adrenaline. But I also would consider them to be a little bit more on the stimulating side. We usually think of adaptogens as being herbs that are somewhat energizing. And then it depends on the specific adaptogenic herb as well as your body's response to it, whether it's a lot energizing or a little energizing. And there are a few herbs that we call adaptogens like holy basil that are a little bit more on the calming side. So there's a bit of a continuum in there, and they can be really nice for folks who are looking for a little bit of boost of energy during the day or who are just looking to be more resilient to stress during the day. That said, they're not always right for everybody, especially when we get into each individual herb. We all respond a little differently. And because they are, as a general rule, a little bit more on the stimulating side, sometimes they actually can make people have a harder time sleeping. And then other times they help people sleep better. And so that's quite individual. They're not my immediate go-to when it comes to sleep support. I will sometimes incorporate them into people's protocols, but there are other herbs that I tend to turn to more often.
Well, another category of herbs that you talk about in the book are nervines. So I was wondering if you could explain the difference between an adaptogen and a nervine and the role that a nervine in particular will play in helping us get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, I love the nervines. I think they're really helpful in a lot more situations, even though they might be easily overlooked because they're just a little bit more gentle, a little bit more subtle. So a nervine, the way that I and most herbalists would define it, is an herb that is very restorative to the nervous system. So it's very nourishing, very soothing. Oftentimes they have a little bit of a calming action, but usually if they were an herb that was more sedating, I would put that in the category of a stronger relaxant or a sedative. And so the nervines are usually a little bit more mid-range, but slightly calming without being overly sedating. And I love them day or night for sleep support and just for stress support. And they blend well with adaptogens too, especially in those daytime blends. Sometimes it helps to hear a few examples of herbs in these different categories. And some of my favorite nervines, they include lemon balm, maybe bacopa, maybe some milky oats, potentially motherwort. Holy basil or tulsi is great because it's a little bit of everything. It's both a nervine and an adaptogen. And I would say that ashwagandha has the potential to be both a nervine and an adaptogen. Though in my mind, I think of that a little bit heavier on the adaptogen side. And then other adaptogens that are more classic adaptogens include ginseng, which I don't use very often because of the sustainability, cost, and adulteration concerns, but it's one that people have heard of. Eleuthero, rhodiola, those are more classic, quote unquote, adaptogens.
Let's play a little game then. I got a short list of herbs here. So I'm going to name the herb, and these are the ones I've just taken out of your book. Some of my favorite herbs that you mentioned in the book. And so I'll name the herb, and then you share your favorite way to work with that herb to help us in particular with easing stress, promoting relaxation, and or get a good night's sleep, depending on what you choose here. Does that sound like fun?
Sounds fun. Let's go.
Awesome. So we're going to start with my favorite herb of all time, holy basil, which many folks might know as tulsi. How do you like to work with holy basil?
Oh, I love to work with holy basil for just about anything in this whole continuum, helping us in the daytime and helping us with sleep at night. And it's phenomenal. It's my favorite. And my favorite way to work with it is as a tea, especially if you have homegrown it or purchased it from a farm because the quality is so much better than what's in the dry international herbal commerce. And I will have it solo. Sometimes I'll throw a little bit of lemon balm. Sometimes I will throw other herbs in with it. Tastes good. It improves the flavor of other herbs quite nicely. And maybe I'll throw a little teaspoon of honey in it. And I will sip that with meals throughout the day. It's just wonderful. But holy basil is great in almost any way you work with it. So you can also make fresh plant tinctures. You can make herb infused honey, glycerites. I mean, it's really very versatile of an herb.
So homegrown is definitely the way to go, but it's a pretty easy herb to grow, isn't it?
It's a very easy herb to grow, pretty much the same way you might grow your typical culinary basils. Maybe it likes things a little bit warmer since it is a plant of Africa and India, but it does pretty well. I usually buy it as a seedling from some of my local growers, and that's kind of cheating, but it gives me a head start. They are a little trickier to germinate You probably have some tips on germination of seeds, but I usually put in like a 6-pack, maybe a 12-pack into a plot, make sure it gets plenty of good soil and drainage and moisture, and it grows so wonderfully in those warm, sunny spots.
It's such a beautiful plant too. It smells so good. Okay, so the next one on the list here, lemon balm.
Lemon balm's another one of my absolute favorites, and no doubt about it, my favorite way to work with it is as a fresh plant tincture. So taking the fresh plant, shoving as much as I can humanly fit into a jar, and then covering it with the highest proof alcohol I have available, like a high proof vodka or grain alcohol. It's just awesome. And then with that, I can take it just a little in water, a couple squirts, or I can throw it into seltzer with a wedge of lemon. That's one of the recipes in the book. And that makes a really good alternative to, a glass of alcohol or soda. And it has this lovely uplifting, calming effect that you can take day or night. It helps with focus as well.
I think lemon balm is a plant that's just full of joy. It just makes me so happy just to smell it or be around it.
It is a great plant, and it blends so well with the holy basil too. They're one of my favorite pairs.
Absolutely. So could we just explore a little bit? You had mentioned using the lemon balm in a fresh plant tincture. Could you explain to us why you would use it as a fresh plant as opposed to dried?
One of the things I love about lemon balm when it's fresh is that it does have all of those fresh aromatic constituents. And that's where a lot of its mood benefit and sleep benefit and cognition benefit all comes from. And when we dry it, it's still nice. I love working with lemon balm dry as tea, again, from the garden or homegrown or from the farm, but it definitely loses a lot in the drying process. You lose a lot of the potency. Even if you dry it and then immediately after drying it, make a remedy with it, it just pales in comparison to all those fresh plant aromatics. And so I like alcohol because it's one of our best solvents to pull out those essential oils and aromatics and to preserve them. It's such a juicy plant that while you can do a glycerin extract and it's lovely, it usually has a really short shelf life because of all the moisture content in the lemon balm. And the same thing with vinegar extracts and honey extracts. Sometimes they're a little tricky compared to alcohol. They're not as good as solvents, but they also don't have that preservation property to preserve all that moisture that was in the fresh plant. That's why I tend to like alcohol and alcohol extract tincture of the fresh plant.
This plant's been driving me wild. How do you like to work with blue vervain?
Blue vervain's a funny one because you might not think of that immediately as a sleep herb. It's a little bit one of those more tangential herbs, if you will, for the nervous system. But those of us who know about it do love it. So blue vervain is bitter. So that is one thing that will probably inform how I work with it, which is usually as a fresh plant tincture. But you can do anything you want with it. It's good fresh, it's good dry. You can extract it via pretty much any method. But the fresh plant tincture or dry plant tincture does a really nice job extracting its properties. And then you can get the dose over with quickly. And I love blue vervain in particular when folks have a lot of physical or emotional tension. That's one of the personalities of this plant, is to kind of ground and relax that tension. And then in particular, if you have tense shoulders, headaches, tics, spasms, spastic muscle pain, that kind of thing, I think blue vervain really shines for. And blue vervain has the reputation of being helpful for that overly driven, really in control type A personality. It's Matt Wood who says, the people whose lists have lists, which I can relate to, they're just, fans of spreadsheets and lists are often the folks who carry a lot of tension and do well with blue vervain. You don't even need a big dose. Sometimes even just a few drops of the extract is enough to bring us back down to earth and relax that tension.
Oh, that's wonderful. And it's such a beautiful plant when it flowers. All right. The next herb on the list is one everybody knows. Everybody's probably working with it in some form or another. It's the good old lavender.
Lavender. So yeah, that is a great plant. We're working primarily with the buds, the unopened buds that are lovely purple color and really aromatic. And you can work with it in a variety of ways. The most famous is as an essential oil, which is usually a more commercial thing. It's a little trickier to make essential oil at home. But if you wanted to DIY, you have several different options. But one of them would be a hydrosol, where you simmer the plant in some water and then you capture that water, that distillate, and that distillate has the essential oils along with the distilled water. And that would be a great way to use it as an aromatherapy spray. You can also add it to other things, but you could also just buy lavender oil and essential oil oil and put a few drops on a tissue and put that underneath your pillow or something like that. You can add it to lotions and apply it topically as a lotion. It's pretty versatile in all your usual remedy making, teas, tinctures, that kind of thing. But it is a lower dose plant, in my opinion, if you're ingesting it. So you usually don't need a whole lot, just like a little sprinkle in your tea or a small percentage in a formula would be fine.
And that brings us to the last herb on the list. I thought this one might be fun. What is your favorite way to work with cannabis?
Cannabis is a fun one. So I am relatively new to the world of medicinal cannabis. This has never really been my thing as a plant, which is not the case amongst, all herbalists. Plenty of herbalists have a long relationship with this plant, but I learned a lot from Tammy Sweet, who has a really great book on medicinal cannabis and other books and courses on cannabis. And so I have only a little bit of experience with it as a practitioner. And in my state, it's not really totally legal as well. So that makes it a little bit challenging. But I would say that you could probably do a tincture of the plant. You do need to decarboxylate it first, which is to put it under some heat for a little bit. And that changes the chemistry. And I will usually do a high proof alcohol extract. And then you can just use a few drops and you can add that to other formulas, or you can take it topically. You can put it in topical formulas. You can do all sorts of different things with that. And Tammy Sweet has really great medicine making courses on that. So I'll defer you to that because really, like I said, it's not my expertise. I kind of know just enough to be able to answer questions that my clients might have. And we did talk about it in the book. It does have some benefits for sleep, although cannabis, especially THC at bedtime, it's great for deep sleep. People tend to fall asleep a little bit better. They might feel like they're getting a better night's sleep, but it can be at the detriment of REM sleep. So it does have pros and cons when it comes to sleep. I'll just say that.
This has been awesome, Maria. Thank you so much. What are the links that folks are going to need so that they can connect with you, check out your online courses, and get their hands on all of your books, including your latest, Herbal Remedies for Sleep?
The best place to find me is my website, which is wintergreenbotanicals.com. And I'm very Googleable. If you just Google Maria and herbalist, you'll probably find me. But I am also on Facebook under Wintergreen Botanicals. I'm on Instagram at Maria Noël Groves. I am also on YouTube. I have a few free videos out there on YouTube, and that's under Maria Noël Groves. So I'm available in a couple of different other ways as well.
Super groovy. I'm going to put all those links in the show notes, folks, so you can click on through. Maria, thank you again for being on the show with us today. This was super fun.
Thank you so much.
Another episode and another closing song. Thanks again to Maria Noël Groves for being our guest today, and to all of you for tuning in. If you enjoy the show and want to show your support, please consider joining our community on Patreon. You can find a link to that, plus so much more, at seedsandweedspodcast.com. This episode was edited and produced by everyone here at Small House Farm, and the music we're enjoying right now is Happy Jazz from Nike T Art. Thanks again for joining us, friends. I'm Bevan Cohen, and we'll see you next time.